Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Hello, and welcome to the Center of Excellence for Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Consultations Inaugural Conference, Equity from the Start. My name is Sherry Heller, and I will serve as your session moderator today. And I am joined by Monique, who will be serving as our technical host. This session is being recorded, and transcription is available through the Zoom platform. Should you have any questions, please feel free to relay your questions through the chat. We are going to hope to have a little bit of time at the end of the session for any questions and answers, and we'll be looking for them in the chat. So just go ahead and send them that way. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pass it on to our presenters. We have some consultants here presenting for us from Arizona, from their Smart Support program, and I will let them take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Lara Scott, and I work for Southwest Human Development in Phoenix and with the Smart Support program, which is mental health consultation.
Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Lopez. I am a mental health consultant for Smart Support, Arizona's early childhood mental health consultation system, and also the training coordinator for our program. Thanks.
So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about Smart Support and share with you why we are here today and talking about the FAN model and how we integrate that into our program.
Right. So jumping right in, the history, a little bit of history behind Smart Support. As you can see that we started providing consultation in 2010 and serve over 400 childcare sites, 50 home visiting teams, and some family, friend, and neighbor programs. We have over 50 mental health consultants that are license eligible, have experience working with young children, and value relationships and reflective capacity. Our funding comes from tobacco tax, First Things First, American Rescue Plan, state opioid response funds, and we do have some contracts through Head Start. These are some of the goals of our program, and we wanted to highlight a few of those as they relate to the FAN model, facilitating attuned interactions. So thinking and moving forward with the FAN, connecting FAN to our goals, we want to ensure that what we're providing, the services, are culturally responsive and really are trauma informed. You do have the slides in your materials, so you can look through and read through all of our goals. So what we're here to talk about today is the FAN model, facilitating attuned interactions, which comes from the Fussy Baby Network at the Erickson Institute. And so initially it was developed and designed for families who are really struggling with fussy babies. And so with the Fussy Baby Network, they worked with these families and tried to figure out what worked, what really helped. And so that came the development of the FAN model with professionals, mental health professionals, pediatricians. And so as we started to dig into facilitating attuned interactions, they realized that this is generalizable, that it could be used in many other settings. And so the FAN model came to Southwest Human Development with our own Fussy Baby Network, with our Birth to 5 helpline, and to Smart Support when we first started having rolling out our program, training staff. And so in the middle, what the fan does in that center part of it is it holds our own emotions, thoughts, ideas, and our consultees, as well as building those capacities of those that we're working with, and strengthening our program, building confidence and competence. So I'd like to go ahead and poll all of you and see sort of what your experience and your knowledge is when it comes to FAN. Is this something that you've heard about before? So is your knowledge something that fits on a postage stamp, a postcard, an envelope, or could you write a book about it?
Oh, it's all screwed up now. You got it tangled up. I have to figure it out.
I see the poll. I see people responding. Oops. Great. Okay.
Well, this is definitely good information for us to know. And so thank you for sharing that. We see that the majority of people, it could fit on a postage stamp. And so just know, as we're sharing about the FAN model today, at the end, we'll share some information on how you too can be trained in the FAN. And the overall goal is just to talk about how it's impacted our program and really made a difference in our consultation. So we're going to go ahead and can we share the results, Sherry? All right, perfect. So that way you all can see that as well. Okay. So let's talk about the FAN as a tool for attunement. And so if you noticed when Denise was talking about the FAN, you saw the actual FAN model. And one of the things that we wanted to share about the FAN is that it is not a linear process, right? And so as you hear us discussing different points of the FAN, you'll hear us refer to each of those little pieces as wedges or core processes. And there were words in the inside, and we'll talk about those. And then there were some words on the outside of the FAN as well. And these were the words that were on the outside of the FAN. So there are 5 core processes or wedges, but the overall goal of the FAN is to help us attune to ourselves and attune to consultees, whoever it is we're engaging with in the moment. So we have the mindful self-regulation wedge, which is also known as the calming wedge. This is going to be used when we as the professional feel dysregulated or out of balance, right? So just making sure to check in with ourselves. There's oftentimes things that we may hear as we're providing consultations, something that we may observe. And so anytime we feel dysregulated, remembering that the FAN helps us to feel calm. We can always use mindful self-regulation in the moment. And that way we can make sure that we're engaging with our consultee, whoever it is that we're supporting, that we're balanced so that we can model that for them as well. The next wedge, which is the empathic inquiry, is the feeling wedge. And this is when the consultee shows or expresses emotion. And so this reminds us to slow down and be attentive to that emotion, to not ignore it, and to make sure that we're acknowledging it and validating it. The third wedge is collaborative exploration, which is the thinking wedge. And this is once consultees are calm and they want to figure out an issue, they want help with something. And I also like to call this the brainstorming wedge, right? But we can't get there until we're calm, until everyone's regulated. The fourth wedge is known as capacity building, which is also the doing wedge. This is when consultees are focused and ready for change. And so again, they need help. And now we're ready to start looking at strategies. What is it that we might do? We're gonna get to the doing. And the fifth wedge, which is known as integration, is also known as the reflecting wedge. And this offers a chance for reflection at the end of a conversation, an observation, an interaction. And it also allows some time for the consultee to maybe have some aha moments, right? In reflecting and thinking about what it is that our conversation's about, or if there's something we've been discussing. So those are the 5 core processes. This is the outside again of the fan that kind of complements the core processes. And again, the overall goal is to use the fan to navigate our intentionality, right? Being very intentional about what we're doing when we're engaging, about being attuned again to ourselves and being attuned to consultees, and taking their cues to figure out where do we need to go, which is why it's not linear. So here we have, again, those 5 core processes up here that we were just talking about. And so I just would like to share a little bit from each about what are some things we might be thinking, or what are some things that we might share with a consultee as we're engaging. So as we're in mindful self-regulation, we're thinking to ourselves, do I feel in balance or do I feel out of balance? What urges do I feel, or what do I feel pulled toward? And again, called mindful self-regulation because we want to be mindful of where we are at. In order for someone else to be regulated, often we need to be regulated as that professional, right? So just keeping that attunement within ourselves to figure out where we are. Empathic inquiry, the 3 things that we focus on are holding, validating, and exploring. And as an example for validating, we talked about consultees coming when they're in empathic inquiry, it's because they've shared something, a big feeling or something that's going on with them. And we want to make sure that we validate how they feel, regardless of the situation. And so really slowing down, making sure that we are not being judgmental, making sure that we're regulated to take in those big feelings, regardless of what they are, and that we can, again, just validate that for them. One thing that comes up for me is, maybe we're in a classroom and we're observing and a child's having some really big feelings and the teacher, maybe struggling too and may not respond the way that they want to, but just because they're frustrated, right? And so it might be natural as a professional to think of the child and think how that might have been for the child. But before we can get there, we have to validate what it's like for that teacher. And what is that teacher's experience like so that we can attune to them, validate them, so that they can be regulated, so that we can then take it to the child and talk about what might be happening for the child. Collaborative exploration, some examples that we might want to talk about as we, again, are getting into the brainstorming. I like to call this wedge, also known as the thinking wedge. A consultee comes to you and says, I don't know what to do, what should I do? Again, slowing them down to think together. The fan helps us do with and not for. And so if you look at this middle box right here, where it's, again, saying to the consultee or the teacher, I see how pressured you feel to find an answer. Let's see if we can understand this better together, right? So we are there to help, we are there to support, but we're not there to do for, we're there to do with. And so helping them in that process. Capacity building, which is the doing stage, offering and exploring and thinking about capacity building moments. So acknowledging, you see validate again, validating is always important whenever you're in a role to support others, right? And then as you can see, supporting. So, making sure that we are, as we're observing, as we're interacting, as we're engaging, things that we've seen that we can highlight, making sure to do that for our consultees so that we can help to build their capacity. And then integration, that 5th core processes or wedge. We want to watch for the consultees' discoveries. We want to watch for moments of reflection. And we want to prompt, meaning we want to facilitate opportunities for reflection to occur as well. So again, using the fan as attunement, going back to that example that I gave, maybe I'm observing a child and I see that child's really having a rough time. And maybe because of the, again, the teacher is super frustrated and been trying really hard. And so because I notice the teacher is frustrated, maybe I find myself getting dysregulated in that situation. And so what I would do is I would immediately go to mindful self-regulation, which is different for everyone, right? So it might mean I take a couple of deep breaths, or maybe I do, whatever it is that we can do for ourselves in the moment to be present, to be calm, so that I can then go into empathic inquiry and say to that teacher, I was observing you and I could see you were super frustrated with that situation. And even just validating, because we're human, a lot of times will bring us down, right? It will help us to calm down and to regulate as well. And again, we can then move into thinking about that child. Sometimes that can happen in one visit. Sometimes that happens over several visits, just depending on the situation. And that's all part of consultation.
Great. I'm going to talk about the arc of engagement. And so using this fan model as part of a GPS, as Laura mentioned, it's not linear. And so when we're interacting with other human beings, the conversation doesn't always go the way we think it's going to go. And so we look to the fan for that attunement piece, finding where that other is and trying to meet them where they are. So it's a GPS, helps us to navigate through conversations. It also helps us to grow through the interaction, not just get through a visit, growing through that. It helps us make attunement conscious as we're using this model, using it as a tool for attunement during consultation, a guide for reflective practice, and a structure for our engagement. And so the ARC is the structure piece. The ARC can help us with mindful self-regulation, being regulated before we go into a visit, after a visit, after we've experienced whatever's been happening during that time. A way of beginning our time together, beginning a consultation, in the middle, finding our way through a conversation that might be difficult, getting to all the important things that we need to get to, and being able to hear what's happening for that consultee. And then at the end, really thinking about where we are now and what we want to remember about our interactions together and reflect on that. So how we introduce FAN, how we orient our staff, train and sustain FAN. So on day one in our program, they receive a laminated FAN. And so it comes in their NEO binder. We talk a little bit about that. And then during the NEO process in their first couple of weeks, they get a quick FAN overview. And all of this happens before they actually get the full FAN training. So after they get the training, there is some other pieces, tools to help you infuse FAN into your work, to practice, and some follow-up pieces. So we want to make sure that FAN becomes part of our language, our way of being, and really is part of how we do the work. We also have some mentoring. The mentoring process as a team, our FAN team, we do provide mentoring to new supervisors to help them navigate through the process with their consultants, so that they can get the practice in the language, and then building in a sustainability plan. How will we keep this alive? What will that look like moving forward? How do we continue with FAN? And so some outcomes, the impacts of FAN, what people are saying about it. So we use collaborative exploration more in visits. As Laura mentioned, the brainstorming wedge of the FAN. So that collaborative moment where we're not just giving information, resources, our knowledge, but we're doing this sort of side by side together. So that we're listening without trying to change somebody's mind, without judgment. We're able to share with one another, brainstorm, and see ourselves as more competent. So applying FAN, using mindful self-regulation. We know the past couple years have been just right, unprecedented. We've been through some things that have thrown us for a loop, that we've had to be flexible. And so mindful self-regulation really helps us in all of those moments to find our calm, find our balance, and become regulated so that we could attune to the others that we're working with. So the consultee has become more aware of their skills, empathizing with others, aware of their impact. And a supervisor reflected that she does this really, really well. And when she does, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see those shifts in thinking together.
So as Denise was sharing the importance of keeping the fan alive, we wanted to share what does it look like in Smart Support in our program. And so we integrate FAN throughout the entire program. We use it in supervision. Our program and our agency supports reflective supervision. And so supervisors demonstrate the model and model the FAN during supervision, supporting consultants through the process of slowing down. When consultants come into supervision and maybe dysregulated about something, again, reminding them about MSR. When staff come in and ask about, well, I don't know what to do with this consultee, what should I do? Again, modeling the FAN and working them through the thinking wedge, right? That collaborative exploration. And so in turn, what happens is, because this is modeled for them, we call this the parallel process, that supervisors are able to do this for consultants, and consultants are then able to do this for consultees. So it's not just a model that we're saying, oh, consultants just go out and do this. It's a model that we're all working through in the program, that we're all utilizing. In regards to group, we also have group supervision within our program, meaning we have once a month group meetings where the teams meet together, and we do what's called case consultation, where consultants take turns bringing in difficult situations in regards to consultees that they'd like to brainstorm about with the team. And so again, using and relying on the FAN to think about, okay, how have I been attuned when I'm with this consultee? Do I find myself dysregulated a lot when I'm in this visit, or when I'm observing or talking to this individual? And so thinking about, one, are we taking care of ourselves? Are we attuned with ourselves and what we're feeling when we're engaged with in this situation or with this site? And also, again, being able to use the FAN as a model that helps us attune to others. So we talk about that individually, and we also talk about that as a group. And then in regards to consultation, as Denise was sharing also, within our program, all consultants, after they receive the FAN training, then they go to what we call level 2, meaning that they get FAN supervisions with their supervisor as well. So not only is FAN being modeled and talked about, but we're also intentionally talking about the FAN, documenting those experiences, talking about what wedges that we were able to get to if we're feeling stuck, how we can use the FAN to do that. And really focusing on understanding those cues for attunement, right? Was there something that maybe, as a consultant, is there something that maybe I missed in this visit and I need to go back and maybe do some repairs and acknowledge that? So we use it in each stage of our program and all throughout our program. We also, as I think Denise shared this too, but as consultants come in, everyone is trained. They get a little bit of the FAN when they start, but then within the first 6 months to a year of them starting, they get the full FAN training as well. Our agency, Southwest Human Development here in Phoenix, has adopted the FAN throughout the agency. So myself, Denise, and there's a third trainer, Kristina, she was unable to join us today, but the three of us have been training the FAN to our entire agency since 2019. And so, our CEO just recognized how important the FAN is. We have multiple different programs here. We have several, I think close to 1,000 employees doing all different programs involved in the community and with children and with families. And the FAN is so valued, and it's also brought about, and we'll share this later, but it's also just, we've been able to have common conversations with each other from program to program and talking about the FAN. and utilizing this again in consultation, in home visiting, and Head Start, and all these different programs that we have. Up to date, I think since 2019, we've trained about 706 staff, and that's frontline staff working with families, and we've trained a little over 20 of our administrative staff as well. So I think that goes to show just how valuable the FAN is, and not just consultation, but any program where you're working with families. And even our administrative staff talk about how they find it so much easier to have conversations or difficult conversations with other staff that they support, or coworkers, or whatever the case is, by just understanding attunement and being able to navigate with the FAN. So we want to kind of also talk about the importance of utilizing the FAN for difficult conversations. As you can see here, we have different things, and these are very common, I would say, topics that come up within mental health consultation. And the FAN helps us navigate conversations about trauma, gender expectations or gender roles, race, equity, grief, loss, general mental health, and so many other difficult topics that come up for us. So in thinking about that and the way that we utilize the FAN to do that, I want to kind of take you back to when we were discussing about mindful self-regulation and empathic inquiry, and trying to gauge and take on those cues from our consultees. And the reason that that's so important, and I'm going to share an example with you too, is because these are topics that oftentimes consultants or professionals can be uncomfortable having, right? And so when we're thinking about, as a consultant or whatever your position is, your role is, when we're thinking about having conversations or talking about things that we've observed or that we've noticed, or maybe someone brings it up to us, and again, it might feel super uncomfortable for us, remembering that we have the ability to go to mindful self-regulation. The key is noticing for us when we feel dysregulated, right? And having a technique or a skill or something to do to help us to be present. Sometimes it's not that somebody brings it up to us, but we might observe something, we might witness something, and we know that it could be falling into one of these categories or something else that might be really difficult to talk about. And so even though it might be uncomfortable for us, we know it's something that we might need to address in order to move forward, in order to really support a teacher or a director or a site in the way that they would be beneficial and effective for them. And so as things come up, keeping attuned to ourselves, but also then being able to put out little things to see how they react. The FAN helps us pick up on these cues, right? I can say, oh, like, I noticed X, Y, and Z in this classroom, and I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about gender expectations, right? Maybe you notice a teacher gearing a little girl towards the dolls and away from the trucks, for example, right? Oh, the trucks are for boys. You should come over here to the dramatic play area and play with the kitchen, right? And so we might, if I were to see that, and it definitely may not be intentional on the teacher's part, but I might be thinking, wow, I wonder if this teacher is thinking about gender roles and how having these expectations could be really heavy on children, or whatever the case is, right? And so even though it might be uncomfortable, I can say to I might say to the teacher, oh, I noticed that you geared little Katie or little Samantha over to the dramatic play area, and I was just wondering why, right? I can just say really simple things and ask really simple questions, and depending on the teacher's cues and how the teacher responds to that, utilizing the FAN lets me know, does the teacher get dysregulated immediately? Maybe the teacher's not ready for this conversation, or maybe the teacher wasn't even aware. So again, utilizing the FAN to pick up on those cues. Maybe the teacher shares something that happened from their own experience or their own life, and now we need to go to empathic inquiry, and I need to spend some time just validating that for them before we can move forward. I wanted to share also a quick example of how we can use the FAN for race and equity as well. And this is an actual real scenario that at a site that I provide consultation to. And I'm still with this site. I've been with the site for several years. And I went for a typical classroom visit, and the director and the teacher say to me, hey, we have this new child, and he's been here for a week. He has these really, really big behaviors. He's been doing all these things, or describing all these really big behaviors in the classroom. And the director says, I don't think he can stay here. And immediately what happens for me is I became dysregulated. As a mental health consultant, as a supervisor with Smart Support, I do not believe in expulsion or suspension of early child care in early child care programs. And so I had to, in order to not be triggered and respond from an emotional standpoint, right, and really hear them out, I had to go immediately into mindful self-regulation. And so I started doing some deep breathing. And I, just really quickly, it wasn't enough for them to notice what I was doing, of course, but I just took couple deep breaths. And then I just said, wow, it sounds like you're really having a hard time. And I just went into validating for them. And just me doing that gave a little bit of room for me to then say, can you tell me a little bit more? I was able to explore, like, can you tell me a little bit more about him? So they're sharing all these things about the child. And what stuck out for me, they shared a lot. It was a long conversation. But what stuck out for me was the child had come from another center that had a lot of high turnover. And so he wasn't having consistent relationships with teachers. He wasn't getting a whole lot of teacher interaction where he came from. The other site had some, what I would call very old school, in inappropriate ways of disciplining, still using timeout and other things that have not been found to be effective. And then also the child was a Black boy, and the teacher said he's really big. He's bigger than the other kids, right? So he was what we would call the 3 Bs, a big Black boy. And all of that, again, I found myself getting dysregulated again, right? And hearing all this information. And immediately what I want to do as a professional, as a consultant, is start talking about all these different things and why he shouldn't be suspended. But I knew that was not going to land well with them, right? And so after, again, did a couple more deep breaths, and I talked about, I kind of shifted it for a moment, talked a little bit about, and I know them very well, so I know what they know. We talked a little bit about transitions and the importance of giving children time to transition when they come to new places. And they were like, oh yeah, I guess we really didn't think about that, because they were so dysregulated. They also felt incompetent. The teacher was like, I don't know what to do with him. And this is a teacher who's been a teacher for a very long time. And so she wasn't feeling confident in the situation, and she was feeling very incompetent about having this child in her class. And so I was able to speak to that a little bit and say, I can see that you're really having a hard time, and you don't often have difficulty with children. You have a lot of skills. And so really able to validate both the director and the teacher. They were able to come down in that conversation and regulate. And I was able to kind of put out what I would call like a little feeler. And I said, I'm wondering, because this is a child in pre-K, I said, I'm wondering if he's having this much difficulty now, what it might be like for him when he goes to kindergarten. Because I wanted to see if they were able to think beyond that moment, right? And the director said, oh, well, when he gets to elementary, there's no way they're going to put up with any of this. He's going to get suspended. And I said, I'm not sure if you know, but Black and brown boys have high rates of suspension. And one of the things that I'm thinking about is if there's a way that we can start working on this and addressing this while he's in preschool to keep that from happening, to decrease that. And so when I said that, again, it kind of just a feeler to see if that was going to dysregulate them further, and the director immediately was like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that Black and brown boys got suspended more. And so the fact that she kind of hung on to that let me know that they would be open to more conversations about that. In that moment, I did not continue talking about that. I kind of went back to talking about my services and what I was there for. And that child became a focused child for us, meaning that I supported the teacher specifically with that child, and I am still doing so. But later, because I was able to continue validating them, and we've continued to have these conversations about race and equity. And they're not necessarily always easy for me either, no matter how long I've been with the program or how long I've been in mental health. But the fan helps us navigate these conversations, and what we would call one drop, right? I can give a little to see how they might respond, to find out, is this something that they're willing to hear more about? Or is this something that I need to back up, and I might need to spend some more time finding out why it might be a trigger for them as well, right? And so I just wanted to give that example of how we're able to navigate the fan, use the fan to navigate these conversations, especially these conversations that are very difficult, that are very uncomfortable, that often we are the only people as a consultant to have these conversations, right? So I wanted to share that with you. So a quick summary of the FAN and using the FAN approach and why it works so well for our program and any consultation program and any home visiting program or program where you're supporting parents or children or families or whatever the case is that it's a model that sees and holds the parent or provider's experience. It allows us to stay longer in hard places. It helps the parent or providers find their way. It's oftentimes in a professional role when we are receiving trainings and information, a lot of times it's about whoever we're supporting, right? But the FAN holds everyone in mind. As Denise pointed out when she showed the FAN and those circles in the middle, it holds the consultant, it holds the consultee, it holds the program. If you're doing home visiting, it holds the family, it holds everybody in mind, right? So we have a model that holds the practitioner as well as the parent or the provider. It supports the consultative stance. I've been in other workshops throughout the CoE conference the last couple of days, and I know the consultative stance has been spoken about quite a bit, but if you are not familiar, definitely just do a quick Google search on mental health consultation, consultative stance, and some information will come up for you. But the FAN definitely supports all of those things, not being the expert, making sure that we're holding hope, making sure that we're working together and that it's a partnership, which are all part of the consultative stance. The FAN helps us address urgent concerns while building capacity. So something big comes up and we're able to immediately go to empathic inquiry and hold them and validate however it is they're feeling in a non-judgmental way. We can do that. And then once they're regulated and ready, we can move on to talking about to that thinking wedge and to that doing wedge. It holds a huge place for MSR, which is often complex, it can be frenetic. And so understanding that MSR is such a huge piece, and at any time we can access, MSR stands for mindful self-regulation. At any time we can access mindful self-regulation. And also thinking about the ARC that Denise shared as well, and having a before contact routine and having an after contact routine, just to help us to be present and to be aware of how we are when we enter a space, when we enter into a center or whatever our work is. It supports the greater charge of the work, and that kind of goes along with what I was sharing about our agency, that our entire agency is being FAN trained, and it's awesome to be able to talk to coworkers and other programs, and maybe we're all in a huge meeting together or whatever the case is, or somebody that I've trained or mentored and able to say, oh, how it's going. And they might say, oh, they give me an example, and they can say, start pulling examples from the FAN, and we know exactly what we're talking about, even though we work in two different programs, which leads us to this very last one, lingua franca, which stands for common language. It gives us a common language in our program, and it gives us a common language in our agency, again, to share and be able to understand the overall importance of attunement when we're supporting teachers, educators, families, parent, whoever it is. It gives us that ability to have that common language between each other. So we will definitely have some time for some questions, but we wanted to also share this information with you. As Denise said, she is our training coordinator for Smart Support, and so her email is right here. If you have, and we'll have time to answer some questions if there's some in the chat as well. But we wanted to share with you Denise's information. We also wanted to let you know that here within Smart Support, we are hiring for mental health consultants. And so if you or anyone you know is looking for a consultation position, we're hiring throughout Arizona. So please feel free to contact Denise and she can give you more information about that. And then if you are interested in being trained in the FAN or having your program trained or whatever the case is, please reach out to Erickson Institute. Denise, Kristina, and I train at Southwest, but we don't train nationally. But you can reach out to Erickson Institute for FAN training. Mary Nowak, here's her information down here, so you can take a screenshot, or it will also be in the PowerPoint that you receive. But we would strongly encourage you, to reach out. The FAN has been, it's a huge part of our program. We are strong believers in the FAN, and we know that it's been very effective throughout our program and throughout all the other programs that we've trained here at Southwest as well. So I am going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to hand it over to Denise and then or Sherry to discuss any questions that may have come in.
Do we have questions in the chat, Sherry?
One question we have is, do you have any information about research into the efficacy of the fan model?
Ooh.
Oh, good one.
Right, great question. And you know, Sherry's also a fan trainer and associated part of the Fussy Baby Fan Network. And so yes, there is lots of research done on the fan. And Linda Gilkerson typically presents at a 0 to 3 conference about that. So we can get you some articles or information. You can either myself send it to my email or to Barry's.
Yeah, and I think if you go to the fan website, which Rebecca great put in the chat, they also have some links to some of the research that's been done. So there has been a lot of research. I don't know about specifically in consultation, but I know definitely for home visiting, there are a number of programs that have infused the fan for consultation, and that keeps growing. I know Louisiana, the Tykes program that's done several presentations has infused the fan, and I know Arkansas has infused the fan. They've done some presentations over the 3 days as well. And then there's other programs that are getting trained in using it. So
Thank you.
let's see. We have, would you recommend that all mental health consultants use the fan?
I would say yes. We train every consultant, every supervisor, and even our admin staff who take calls from providers, right? Those who are those frontline staff who talk to providers about their need for consultation. I think that's really important too.
And I was gonna, can I add to that really quick, Sherry?
No, you answer.
I was just going to add to that, that, you know, we all receive a lot of trainings, right? And different things to do and different ways to do things. And the fan is not necessarily a different way. It adds to what we're already doing, right? It just helps us to slow down in the work. I think anytime you're in a position where you feel like you need to rush or you feel like things are urgent, it just reminds us to slow down and make those connections that we all talk about are so important, right? That's, you know, anytime we're working with families, and especially in mental health consultation, we talk a lot about the importance of relationships and connecting, and the fan helps us do that in a way that is very natural and genuine, and also allows us to still do what we need to do as a consultant. And so I would agree with Denise that I think it would be a huge benefit to any consultation program.
And I wanted to add, it's not, it's not like an extra thing. It's sort of more central to how we do the work.
Yeah, like a framework. See a lot of people saying, oh, we use the fan too and we love it. Alabama, Maryland, lots of folks saying that. One person asked about the cost of the fan training. I think Mary would be the one you'd reach out for that, huh? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then another person asked, any suggestions on how to support a provider who might be sort of stuck in a dysregulated place to move in the direction of the brainstorming wedge? So moving from EI, right, from empathic inquiry into collaborative exploration. What are you thinking, ladies?
I can answer, and then Denise can share what, and our answers may be very similar. I was going to say, one thing we want to do is always be attentive to, are we spending enough time in EI, right? Like, have we really spent enough time in empathic inquiry? Are we really hearing them and really validating? And if you feel like, yes, I have, and they're still in the same place, then, you know, you can, you know, in a very professional, very supportive way, you know, say, hey, you know, I recognize that you've shared this with me a couple of times, and this seems really important to you, and I acknowledge it, but, you know, it doesn't seem like something that we can do anything about right this minute, or it seems like something that maybe it would be, maybe you have to give them a referral or whatever the case is, and ask them, would it be okay if we move to thinking about X, Y, and Z, right? That capacity building or CE, would it be okay if we think about this together while we hold this in mind until we know more about it, or until there's something we can follow up on. I think a lot of times, again, we feel stuck, like, oh, I want to hear them, but they're not moving. And so sometimes it's just being very supportive and very direct about acknowledging that we've kind of been in this place for a little while, and I hear you, and I want you to know it's very important to me, but we can't, can we think about doing X, Y, and Z?
And that's something we talk a lot about in the training, the bridging those two wedges. So thank you.
Yeah, excellent.
And Sherry, Sherry, you're a trainer, so you also feel free to respond or answer too. We value your input as well.
Great job, Laura. I think you got it covered. Yeah, and the other thing is sometimes just like you said, acknowledging, I see where you are. Do you think we could move into trying to come up with some solutions together? So, kind of labeling it for them. We have 5 more minutes before the session's gonna close, and I just want to see if I'm looking for more questions in here. If anybody has any they want to add, feel free to write it in. If I missed one of the questions, we're getting lots of thank yous. Wonderful session. People are saying they're going to connect with you all.
Perfect.
Do you think the FAN model has increased the ability to focus on equity issues because of the ability to stay in the hard places?
I'll let you answer that one, Denise.
Oh, thank you. So I think as trainers, Laura and I talk a lot about that. And Laura gave a great example today about that equity and expulsion and how people are thinking in childcare settings that we work in. So we would both agree that it does truly support that, right? Those difficult conversations that come up that we're forced to address and step into, even when it's super challenging, dysregulating, and hard.
And I think, oh, go ahead, Sherry.
Oh, go, Laura.
I was just going to share, and I think too, I know a lot of times we all spend time in meetings and discuss equity and diversity, and a lot of consultants and a lot of professionals, they want to, but their question is always how do I do that? How do I talk about it? And if they want to, the desire is there, but they just don't feel like they have the tools or the skills to do so. And I feel like the FAN allows that to happen, but still in a very genuine way, right? Like it shouldn't necessarily be a conversation that is written out for us. It should be coming from whoever we are and what we're presenting in that moment, in our own experiences or whatever. And so I feel like the FAN allows you to do that in still a very genuine way, but does give you some of that foundation to do so.
Excellent. And then Aaliyah Eckley says, thanks, ladies. Great job, as well as many other people who are enjoying it. And Gianna asks, are there any community of practice ongoing groups for the FAN?
That's a really good question. And that would be a question for Mary as she sort of tracks those nationally and those groups that are happening.
Wanda wants to know, Denise, you say you train individuals who want to become consultants. Is that in your area only?
That's within Smart Support. So we train all our Smart Support consultants statewide. And so if others are interested, that would be Erickson and finding a trainer to do that in your state and in your region.
Lots of kudos. Love the examples. Thank you for sharing the specific examples and really making it applicable. Wonderful information. Great presentation, ladies. We have a minute before it officially ends. And so I just want to thank you all very much. I've been excited about this presentation since I saw it submitted to the conference. And so I'm so happy you brought the FAN into our conference. Thank you for taking the time to do that. And I just want to urge everybody, we have our final plenary coming up. It's going to be a really good plenary, and we'll be closing out the conference. So I hope that you can grab a little something to drink or whatever and join that final session of the conference in the day. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.